Bulabinaka, and welcome to Gold FM Speak Your Mind. Now today we touch an issue that, I've been talking about for some time, and that is the Methodist Church of Fiji. They've plotted a new course in moving forward, one that has had many Fijians praising its new direction. Last month, the president of the Methodist Church of Fiji, whilst addressing a mini-conference of divisional superintendents and divisional stewards of the church, shared his map of the church's new exodus. Nalako Eaniwo. The move in this direction was first evidenced at the election of the previous president of the Methodist Church, late Reverend Atuikilakilawangiratu, who sadly passed away last year. With me today is a key person tasked with helping communicate its new direction for its members and the general public, the Secretary for Communications and Overseas Mission for the Methodist Church of Fiji, Reverend James Bogwan. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, Padeli. I'm sorry the President or General Secretary were not available this morning to come on the show. Last minutes, but that's what we are here for anyway.
Well, we're very grateful for for turning up this afternoon, and really grateful also because Reverend James Bogwan, I'm going to be very biased at the beginning of this show, is a keen Gold FM member. I say member because he's a keen listener. Now, we'll start with, traditionally, Itoke Methodists have had the position of the church and a vanua ingrained into them, one often being seen as an extension of another, and at some point, the state as well. A position that the Methodist Church caught itself in 1987, and in the recent past, from 2009 to 2013, the Methodist Church was in a particularly difficult position with the government. Now, how difficult a road has this past made for the work to move forward?
Thank you, Padeli. We cannot deny history. Although if you go far back enough to the origins of Christianity in Fiji, you will see that the roots of what we face in 87, 2000 and other years were laid when the missionaries and the colonial powers, both coming from a particular colonial attitude, it was inculcated to a certain extent. But the church really has spent a number of years reflecting on its past, on its present, and on the future. As you know, from 2009 to 2012, the church experienced some difficulties under the military regime. Conferences were not allowed to be held, meetings were not allowed to be held, right down to the grassroots level. And that experience caused the church to sit back and look at where it was and the path that had led it to this particular place in time and in history. And the church leaders then went on to reflect on, what is the church supposed to be? Where is it supposed to be? Where is it supposed to be going? And from 2009 onwards, the church leaders came up with a way forward after reflection and prayer and looking at what the church should be in the 21st century in Fiji. And the result was what we know as the 12 pillars of the church, which form the basis of our connectional plan and our way forward. And so it's very much been an acknowledgement of what we have been, what mistakes we have made, and the church leaders have acknowledged those historical facts. We cannot deny it, but at the same time, the church is a moving church. It's not static. It's not stuck in one particular mindset or place, and the church is constantly evolving and reforming as we are called to be as Methodists. And so we find ourselves, at this new place, at this place where we've been looking and seeing where should we be going and how do we get there. And the result is what we know as the new Exodus or the Lakoyanivo.
With this, you mentioned the church leaders. Do these also involve those leaders that were also involved in the past administration?
Yes. Last year we celebrated our Golden Jubilee. That's 50 years of being a self-governing church from 1964. when the reins of the management of the church, handling its own affairs, was given back to Fiji by the Methodist Church in Australasia, which is now the Uniting Church of Australia. And as part of that process, as we approached the 50 years and as we went into the time of celebration, we thought it's important to take stock of the last 50 years. And part of that was a reconciliation process. By reconciliation, we acknowledged not only has the church had played an important role or had an impact on the national life of the country, but there have been significant events, breaking of relationships. We've had our problems internally as well. And so the process was about not just forgive and forget, but about restoring relationships. This was very evident in the consecration or induction of the late President, Reverend Dr. Tuikilakila Wangairatu. At his induction, it was done by the immediate past president, Reverend Ame Tungawe, as well as former President, Reverend Koroi, Reverend Chositeki Koroi. And so it was a way of coming full circle. And so we have, within our own community, been undergoing or going through this process of reflection and reconciliation. And as part of the celebrations, we had this reconciliation process right down at the grassroots level. So it's not something that's been happening just at the top. It's been something that's been happening in our local churches, in our circuits or parishes, or tambadakadaka as we call it in Itoke language, in our divisions or wase, and then right up to the top. And this is a process that we did last year.
I was going to ask, how well has that fared with the members of the Methodist Church? And how responsive have they been for this new direction?
Well, I think the response has been well received. And the reason for that is it's something that we have been discussing within the church. From 2012, we began to be allowed to hold our conferences again, albeit under that current that restraint at that time. We could only meet for 30 hours in 2012, for 40 hours in 2014. Last year, we were able to actually have a full conference, or almost a full conference, and hopefully we'll be able to do that this year. But throughout the process, we have been sharing with our members what's going on. And I think that's important, to share the perspective, not just the academic side of things, but also the theological side. So there's been a balance of understanding where we're coming from on our spiritual journey and what that means in terms of the institution as well.
On that note, we'll take a short break here on Gold FM Speak Your Mind. We continue our talk with the Fiji Methodist Church's new direction right after this short break. Welcome back to Gold FM Speak Your Mind, and we are speaking with, the Secretary for Communications and Overseas Mission of the Methodist Church of Fiji, Reverend James Magwan, and we're looking, we've just touched on the introduction of the new way forward for the Methodist Church of Fiji, and just before the break, we also looked at how well it has been received by members of the Methodist Church. Now, we also look at some of the activities of the Methodist Church in the past, and that's one of its, perhaps one that has been unfairly pointed out as elements of, the ones that members of the church have perhaps made or singled out as one that turned them off from church. I'm talking about fundraising and the annual conference, and how the annual conference had in the past became more about the fundraising affair rather than planning, or too much emphasis on this, that created a lot of issues with members of the Methodist Church. Now, with these new plans for the Methodist Church of Fiji, how are the alternative means of raising funds faring?
Thank you, Patheli. You know, one of the interesting things is, while we were going through some very difficult times between 2009 and 2012, it was interesting, although we were not able to hold conference, although we were not able to have our usual Solevu or choir festival, our levies were at 100%, which means our members were sending the money that they pledge as members. What it is in terms of our fundraising, if I can just draw it out for us, we're an organization. We're a religious organization. We have a number of programs and activities that any NGO or CSO or any organization are involved in. We have our pastoral programs down at the grassroots level where our churches and pastoral work take place, but we also have significant institutions such as our social welfare programs, Christian justice or social justice programs. We have the training of the theological college, which is where we train our ministers, training of our deaconesses, and the other various other departments. And so that money has to come from somewhere. I didn't bring the chart in which you have a breakdown, but the bulk of the money goes towards theological education. More than 50% goes towards theological education of our ministers. And that means those who commit to serving as ministers or as deaconesses, once they've gone through the exams and the examination at conference, their commitment is recognized because they're basically on scholarship as they're trained. So the members are providing for them. And so our membership levy is $15 per confirmed member. Now, that is for the running of the national church. And then we have our free will offerings and things, and the care of our local churches, the care of the ministers, the care of the upkeep of the building and things like that, the church buildings and things like that. So while we were not able to hold conference, our members continued to give money to these things. Now, often from an outside perspective, when you look at our choir festival, when you look at our conference, you see people coming together, people singing, people sitting around, people giving money. Now, what we need to understand is in the culture that we have in Fiji, the concept of solevu is when people traditionally come and present money. So it's often reported in the media, X amount of dollars was raised, $3 million. This is people bringing their levies and presenting it in a traditional way. It is also sometimes when we have special fundraising projects that people come and make donations at that way as a way of supplementing what others are not able to give. Sometimes some members are not able to give that amount, so other people through their donations fill up that gap. And so this is the process. It's just the way that we do it. It's more of a celebratory atmosphere. We understand in the past that sometimes these things are addressed as, sometimes it can be seen as an oppressive thing or a burden to our members. But we also understand that people want to give and be part of the church. So we're also looking at ways in which we can move towards some sort of self-sufficiency, utilizing our church resources to lessen the load on our members, but also create opportunities in which we can provide for our members as well.
May I ask, what are some of the ways that the Methodist Church of Fiji is looking at?
Sure. We have two major projects going on, or two areas that we are looking at. The first is our Methodist Church Holding Trust. The church owns some freehold property. Obviously, we were not, because when the church was established in Fiji, it was predominantly amongst the Itoke community, and so access to freehold land or gifts of freehold land weren't as forthcoming as perhaps other churches. But we have some freehold land, and the church is looking into how to develop and make the use of the most of this freehold land, especially some of that are in prime real estate, So how can we maximize the use of this land in a way that it can earn income which will facilitate the work of the church? That's one area. So the Methodist Church Holding Trust is looking after that. We have buildings like Reverend John Hunt Building, where FICAC is at the moment. We have other lands that are being leased out for agricultural or commercial purposes. We have subdivisions that we are looking at, and that money comes back into the church and helps us with the operation of of the church. The second area is our land registration program. We have a department for land registration and development. Over the years, 180 years, Methodism or Christianity has been in Fiji. And when it came to Fiji, and as people accepted the gospel and accepted Christ and became Christians, as they decided to give something to the church, many Matangali, Toka Toka, and the larger landowning units gave land to the church. Traditionally they'd come out and they'd say, okay, Talatala, this is your area, And so we're going through that process at the moment of finding out exactly what was given. There's been a saying that the church is the third largest landowner in the country. Of course, this is native land that has been given. But how do we maximize the use of this land so that we can do two things? We can earn some money for the church, but at the same time create opportunities for our young people, for our unemployed people to earn a living as well.
To also try and work on the land,
yes,
perhaps.
Absolutely.
Yes. Well, we'll take another short break here on Gold FM Speak Your Mind, and we'll be right back after this short break. Welcome back to Gold FM Speak Your Mind, and we continue our discussion about the Methodist Church of Fiji. Now, just before the break, we spoke of marking the land that has been given to the Methodist Church of Fiji. Now, this with many traditional Itoke villagers and landowners who had over the years given it to the church. But had there been any previous attempt before to try and mark out these areas?
Not in a consolidated attempt. Maybe within some of the Wasiwasi, some of the divisions, they would have done that. But this is, a comprehensive effort and it's quite a mammoth undertaking.
It's going to be.
Yeah. We have 56 divisions, and we're going through. Our secretary for land registration and development is currently working through these different areas. The last work was done in Vanuatu and Madhuata earlier this year.
So it started.
It's begun. It's been going on for a couple of years, but again, it's a long process. They go out for weeks at a time, come back and consolidate, and it's very much a collaborative effort. It's not as if the Secretary for Land Registration is going out and saying, okay, this is what we're doing. We're relying especially on our divisional superintendents, our divisional stewards, chief stewards to be part of this. And it's done in a very transparent manner. We see the land that they've allocated. It's marked out using GPS, and then there's a formal agreement, and it's done also in a very spiritual way. There's a church service in which they say yes, they agree, and the forms are filled, and we get the data back to us. And so we hope that once we're able to look at all this land, we're able to see how best we can utilize it. We know that the buzzword in Fiji at the moment is about land utilization. So we're just trying to be responsible in our use of the land that the Vanua has allocated to the church.
Now, I'm also going to throw a buzzword at you that was also used as part of the 12 pillars of the Methodist Church New Direction, and that is youth ministry. Now, has been in the past, the history of the Methodist Church has often been seen. It's been held by many of the church leaders, albeit it'll be the elders. Now, with the direction towards youth ministry, how effective do you think this will be?
Well, it's interesting you bring this up, Bedeli, because the first Fijian to be elected president of the Methodist Church, the late Reverend Setarekitu Lavoni, was secretary for the Young People's Department prior to becoming the president. And it was something that continues to be in the heart of many of the Methodist leadership, because that's the future. It's also the present. We have an increasingly young population. The young people and popular culture drive much of what is happening in society. And so our Young People's Department is in the process of restructuring itself, relooking at its curriculum and where it's going to go. Excuse me. In the past, in the recent past, the Methodist Lay Training Center and the Young People's Department were an amalgamated program based at Davui level, at our center in Davui level. But the plan is for it to be separated and to focus a lot more on young people and the issues affecting our young people. Last year, at the end of the year, we had Fiji, or the Methodist Church in Fiji, hosted the coming together of the young people of the Methodist churches in Fiji, Samoa, and Tonga as part of a triennial event.
Mm-hmm.
And so they addressed a lot of the issues that young people face. It's about taking those things seriously. But coming to the issue of young people and their role and their place in the church, I know I'm not that young, but I am one of the youngest leaders in the church at the moment, and with some very heavy responsibilities. And so we can see that the church is open to new ideas, addressing the issues of the young people, and understanding that they have a key role to play in the church. In our governance system in the church, from the circuit level where we have our quarterly meetings, there is always a youth representative, right up to conference level where there is a youth representative. So it's often the case where we tend to look at the more senior people in our churches. The young people also have an important role to play, and their position and role is recognized. It's a matter of culturally accepting what they have to say, and that is the challenge, not just within the church, but I think within our society as a whole.
Now, speaking of those challenges and the issue of youth, just last week, the unfortunate incident of a young lady that took her own life, allegedly because of the use of her mobile phone in a church-managed school, the school managed by the Methodist Church of Fiji. Now, if we look at how these are just some of the challenges that the Methodist Church also has to look at, the use of new media and the way culture for young people has also changed. Now, would you be able to, what does the church look at in terms of these types of issues? And how would you respond to it?
Well, I think we're taking these issues very seriously. I think I'll just give an overall and then we go to the specifics. This year, the Methodist Church has begun work on what we call a family life ministry. And while we have our youth, young people's department working on its own, we also have the understanding that the youth exist within a framework of the family, right? And the understanding that if we can work on the family unit, create a safe family, a strong family, the youth will be empowered through that family system to be empowered to face whatever issues they're facing. So the key thing is the family. It's all well and good to do things with our young people and empower them individually or separately, but if there is no space, if there is no place for them or recognize the way in which they interact with their parents, with other young people, of course, as well, but within the family, that's an important issue. So we've developed through our Department of Christian Citizenship and Social Services a family life ministry, of which young people play an important role in that. If we look at the process in which our young people are involved in programs, this is another area of importance, and looking for meaningful ways in which they engage in the church. Worship is one of those areas. The church has recognized that worship needs to be meaningful to all types of people, all cultures, all genders, and of course, different age groups as well. And so we see a move to incorporate things that would be more meaningful to our young people. We're moving a bit slowly on that because we're challenged with the issue of tradition and culture, but the move is happening, and that's the key thing to understand. If you rush something, it is then only accepted at surface level. But if you work consistently and constantly on those issues, then they start to be understood. And if you explain what we're doing and why we're doing them, that's when we get the acceptance by the greater community.
Unfortunately, we're being interrupted again for another short break. We'll be right back after these few words. You're back on Gold FM, Speak Your Mind, and I'm with the Secretary for Communications and Overseas Mission of the Fiji Methodist Church, Reverend James Magwan. Now, just before the break, we spoke a little of the church's youth ministry and also the family fellowship. And now I'll drive you back to the question. What would be the Methodist Church's position at this time, Fiji Methodist Church's position at this time, in light of the incident of the young lady who took her life at a school that was managed by the Fiji Methodist Church?
Thank you, Patheli. It's a little difficult to comment on an issue that is still being investigated by police and also the Ministry of Education. Nevertheless, when we received the news about this tragedy, the President and General Secretary of the Church were deeply shocked, as were many of us in the church, members and leaders alike. And that we have conveyed to the family our deepest condolences. The challenge is how do we deal with these sorts of situations? The rise of social media and new technology, mobile phone access. You and I both went to school in a time where social media was somebody writing a note and passing it around class. Well, although we did have pens in those days, so that's a bit modern. Now we come into this situation where people are on Facebook, people are on other social media. There's websites, there's phones, and accessibility to these sorts of things are very common, important tools of communication, which is why the church has embraced them. But at the same time, the role in which these things play in our communities, how we use them, those are important issues as well. Just coming back to the issue of that incident with the student at Jasper Williams High School, it's a very tragic situation, and we don't condone in any way bullying or shaming of young people. I was just looking at our draft child protection policy that the church has as part of its code of conduct, which is coming to conference this year. Mm-hmm. It's been in the works for about 2 years now, and should be brought to conference this year. And it's specifically about ensuring that our communities, our churches, our schools are safe places. These are places where children go to be nurtured, where they go to be educated, where they go to be, from our concept as a church, go to be molded to be full human beings. So we take this space very seriously, not just in terms of academic education, but in terms of moral formation. And so it's a tragedy when these sorts of things happen, and given the circumstances in which they happened. This morning we were discussing it at our secretariat meeting where the secretaries for the different departments meet. And I understand that the Deputy General Secretary of the Church, Reverend Vunisiwai, and Secretary for Education will be going down to Lautoka, in the near future, very short future, maybe this week, I believe, to go and visit the school, but also to go and visit the family. We were very distressed that no one from the school went to the funeral, but we understand that this was a shocking incident. It's not something that happens every day. When there is a death in the community, someone has an accident or natural causes, we know how to respond. But in this situation, because the school was brought into it, the teachers and so forth, there was a point where people really didn't know how to respond to the situation.
There was quite a lot of finger pointing too.
Yes,
after.
yes. And so, this also reminds us about how responsible we are in terms of being media users. In this day and age of social media, we all need to be careful about, not controlling ourselves, but being responsible. The police, the Ministry of Education have asked people to respect and allow the investigation to take place. So that's what we're doing as a church. We're doing our own internal investigations from what we can do in terms of the management, in terms of the pastoral care, etc. But we have to allow that investigation to take place because it's a police case and it's a Ministry of Education institution as well as a church institution. So we're trying to work within that framework. But it's very important that we learn from this in many other ways. How people respond to these situations also is something that we need to look at.
As unfortunate an incident this is, we also mentioned that part of this is also the use of new media. Now, moving forward, how does the Methodist Church of Fiji look at the use of new media? Facebook and Twitter, quite rampant with members of the Methodist Church, especially the youth.
Exactly. When television came on, we were used to radio, we were used to newspapers. Television is a very big thing when it came in the 90s. Also a very expensive thing, so really couldn't get involved in that. But with social media, the church has looked and seen that this is a way to reach our members. And so, as part of the reestablishment of the Department of Communication and Overseas Mission, the church has a Facebook page. We have a website. We're on Twitter. We use mobile phones to send morning devotional thoughts to those who subscribe to it. It's a way of reaching our members, but also the interactive nature of social media. It is a way in which not only traditional media is very much putting the message out, but the Methodist Church wants to be a communicative church, so we want to get feedback as well. And so we find Facebook as a very good tool for us. We put out the news and events, but also people send photos, send information, and we post that on our Facebook page as well. And also if there are any questions, any issues, and they're not sure who to talk to, they send us a message on our Facebook page, and our team gets that to the person responsible, the department responsible. So we're finding it a very good way of interacting with our wider church community, not just in Fiji, but also the Methodist community that lives overseas. And it's a good way of keeping in touch with everyone. At the same time, it's a good way of addressing people in the situations where they're at. And so what we've asked is our Methodist members, it's very simple. They just have to go and click like. Right. And they can find out what's going on in the church. A lot of times people have said, we don't know what's happening, what's going on. And so, we're using the best we can to, the technology available. Keeping in mind, however, that while new technology is moving forward and our young people are moving forward, there are still those who don't have access to this sort of communication. And so we've been, trying to bridge that gap by being able to reach those who are demanding, access through Facebook and the internet, but also those who can only receive radio signal or not even that. And so one of the things that we've done recently is, as of last year, we've launched our newsletter for the church, Neitambe, which is something that comes out quarterly. So it's able to bridge those who listen, able to receive FBC on Radio Fiji 1, not Gold FM, unfortunately, but also those who are online and those in the gap as well.
All right. We'll talk a little bit more about Neitambe and also the work of the Communications Department of the Methodist Church of Fiji right after this short break. Well, we're on the final moments of this week's Gold FM Speak Your Mind, and I have in my hand, one of the editions of the official newsletter of the Methodist Church of Fiji, Neitambe, and this is issue number 3. And how well has this been received? It's in both English and in Itoke.
That's correct. we decided to put it in the two major languages. We still working out on space for Rotuman language, for Hindi, and of course for Chinese. But we hope to develop that in the near future. It's been well received. The challenge, of course, is maintaining, being able to put something out like this for free. It's a free newsletter, but managing the costs of doing that as well.
I was going to say it's going to be a costly affair.
Yes. But it's a quarterly newsletter, and we call it a newsletter because it's just basically information about the church or for the church. We have a lot of issues in there which can be used for the education, for sermon material, but also to help the church members understand the issues that the churches are involved in, why, how, the basic questions like that, yeah.
Now, Naitambe, the title, how did you come about Naitambe?
Well, do you know what the meaning of Naitambe is?
Well, I'm going to have to ask you.
Okay. Well, we did things the way usually things are done in Fiji. We had a committee to look into it. And Naitambe is traditionally the mat plate on which food is given to guests. So it's about this newsletter is the vehicle, the plate on which we feed our members who we feel are very important to us, and feed food that is for their mind, their body, and their spirit as well. And so that's the idea of Naitambe. It's an offering of food. It's the way in which we feed our members. This issue covers a lot of it, quite a few things. We cover our prison ministry, the issues of domestic violence and child protection, articles on pornography, on the environment, and a whole range of issues as well.
These are very good issues and new issues also for the Fiji Methodist Church. I say new, these are old problems, but being looked at with new eyes of the Fiji Methodist Church. And one of which is at the front cover is the issue of West Papua. Never before have we had the Methodist Church of Fiji outright address the issue of independence with our brothers and sisters in Melanesia, like West Papua. Would you care to delve a little further on how Methodist Church of Fiji and how involved in the plight of our brothers and sisters in West Papua?
Thank you. One of the challenges we face and why we put out our own newsletter is in an increasingly secular society, there is now less space given to the voice of the church. Only on religious issues or sometimes a social issue or somebody mentions church, then we're asked for an opinion. Although we were asked our opinion about the flag issue, but that's another story.
We'll get into that later.
Yeah. So in the last few years, increasingly people tend to turn to non-governmental organizations and civil society as the authority to speak on certain issues. But the church has been involved in issues of justice and social justice and society, from the time of Jesus. And very much the Methodist Church has been involved in social justice. That's part of what it means to be a Methodist, to be involved in the social situation in your context and to address the suffering of others as well. And so with the issues that we cover in Naitambe, that's what we're doing. We're bringing so that our members know what the church's stand on a certain thing is. With the case of Tana Papua or West Papua, the church has been involved in this in solidarity with West Papua for a number of years. In 2013, church leaders met both in Fiji and at the World Council of Churches Assembly in Busan, South Korea, with church leaders from West Papua. And of course, they've been aware of this issue through the Pacific Conference of Churches, the PCC, which has played a major role in decolonization and independence movements in the Pacific for decades. Current issues, of course, are Kanaki in New Caledonia, Maui Nui, French Polynesia, and of course West Papua. When we heard the stories and when our church leaders heard the stories from the West Papuans themselves about the suffering that the people go through, and this is the thing that resonates with us, the abuse and violation of human rights of human beings, of ordinary people. And we've had our share of political crisis and all that sorts of things, and violence and things, but it's nothing compared to what they go through. If you look at the photos that they share, if you look at the pictures, if you listen to the stories, you cannot be moved to understand, cannot not be moved to understand what's going on. And so the churches, the Methodist Church very early on said, this is an issue that we're going to address. Our late president said that to the people of the churches of West Papua when they met in Korea. Our General Secretary, then General Secretary, who's now the president, has taken that on board. And along with the other churches, the Fiji Council of Churches, with other groups, have formed this umbrella organization, the Fiji Solidarity Movement for West Papua's Freedom. And our president did the opening and the launch of that particular project, that movement, and the launch of the petition to the Prime Minister, signing it. We had the leaders of the 56 divisions, our lay leaders and our ordained leaders, signed the petition as well. And so it's also showing two things. One, that these issues are important. Two, that we stand in solidarity with our brothers and sisters. And, oppression of any kind is not good.
How well have these messages resonated with, again, I'm going to ask the members of the church, of the Methodist Church of Fiji?
Well, the messages and the change of the process and what we're going through with our Lake Anivo, you get those who are enthusiastic about it, for those who feel that the church has not been progressive enough, has not been, been speaking loudly enough on issues which they feel the Bible calls the church to speak out on. There are those who feel that we are getting too political, but this is an issue of justice, of social justice, and of life. So Jesus was by nature political because he dealt with those issues. But we're talking specifically here about the human rights abuses. For us, the church, that's the first thing. Before you can even consider independence and those other issues, the human rights abuses need to stop. And we need to do whatever we can to stop those things. So we have those who understand, those who support, those who are a little bit reticent about what's going on. And that's why we have Naitambe to explain the situation. And we found the response that, a few people, once they've read the articles, once they understand why we're doing what we're doing, then the acceptance comes. So something like Naitambe and getting the message out is very important for us.
Just equally important also with the issue, or you also mentioned articles on gender violence in this issue. Now, how has that, is this equally as important? I know it is with the Fiji Methodist Church. Now, with the members of the church, knowing that many instances of domestic violence quite rampant in Itoke families, how have they responded, and what's the work like towards with the Fiji Methodist Church?
Yes, it's very, when you look at the percentages, you can't deny those facts. But it's very easy to say Itoke, very easy to say Christian, very easy to say Methodist, but that's just the demographics. What we're talking about here and what we're trying to do is to inculcate a culture of peace, culture of respect. We have said many times that we as the church do not condone any kind of violence in the home against women, against children, any sort of gender violence or gender-based violence or child-based violence. What we're doing at the moment is we're consolidating on that work. In the next few months, our Men's Fellowship Department, Women's Fellowship Department, and Department of Christian Citizenship and Social Services, the Bulararamba Department, will be going out to the divisions and holding workshops in all across the country with our men, with young men from our youth. So we're getting our youth involved, as you raised earlier, and with members of our men's fellowships to address this issue. And they will be trained to go back and spread the message and to help people understand that this has not been accepted for some time, and it needs to remain unacceptable in terms of domestic violence and gender-based violence.
Reverend James Bogwan, unfortunately, time has caught up with us, but thank you again for coming on the show this afternoon.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for that.
And we look forward to having you again. On that note, we wrap up this week's Speak Your Mind. Thank you again. For questions and comments, please feel free to send them in to goldfm@fbc.com.fj. Until next week, good night.